We're at a place in our country's history where I think that the old way of how we have done many things need to be re-examined, refurbished, and even fundamentally changed. And I think the electrical grid, which has served us enormously well, doesn't so much need to get smart for the first time. It's already actually pretty smart if you think about it. It just needs to get even smarter, maybe even wickedly brilliant, so that we really can realize the full advantages of these remarkable technological advances in software, in renewable energies like wind and solar and wave, photovoltaic, you name it, and help us reduce our reliance on things like foreign oil and forms of energy like coal that are contributing to problems like greenhouse gas emissions, and just live in a more sustainable way with more reliance on energy conservation and renewables. The smart grid is going to help enable all of that and accelerate all of that, and that's why it's so exciting.
The smart grid is really about two-way communications. It's rich in information technology and data management, and that really means managing information from all the way from operating the generation and grid to individual homeowners. It's rich in information and information technology.
A much greater, efficient, smarter, just-in-time system that means we're not wasting anywhere near as much energy as we have, and we're sending energy to the right place at the right time, and sending signals out to the users of electricity that there are some ways that they can use it that are a lot smarter than others.
Wouldn't it be better if an electric vehicle did not plug in right at 5 or 6 p.m. when everybody is at the same time making dinner, turning on their heat, lots of load. In fact, that's one of the two peak times during the day. Why not delay that, or at least sequence that with other opportunities throughout the night, and so that we don't have this huge load on the grid all at the same time? And those kinds of possibilities are before us with opportunities in the smart grid.
The smart grid will more and more allow people who decide to generate electricity themselves to distribute it back into the system, to have people decide to turn things off. For example, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's the third day of a heat wave, and you got the washing machine or the dishwasher going. I personally have no objection to the utility company reaching through my wires and turning off my dishwasher to turn it back on again after it gets cooler. Those are the kinds of things that we need to be working on.
We really do want to ensure consumer understanding, buy-in, and make sure that they're very comfortable with the types of opportunities they have, whether it's opting into having their air conditioning load changed for a short period of time to help in a heat wave, or to change the way that their own electric vehicle is being charged. These are types of timing issues that before we just plugged it in and expected power to come our way. All consumers have done that. So the paradigm shift is with certain incentives and certain agreements and understanding that this really helps us optimize the generation, so we don't have to overbuild generation, overbuild transmission, just to meet those times when we might have really large loads on the grid.
Electricity is so inexpensive right now that it's in their self-interest to be willing to spend a little bit more in the short term in order to make big savings in the longer term. That's not how people think about it. They just take it for granted. Turn the switch on, it'll be there. I have no idea what it costs to operate, my computer for an hour, much less a day. We need to get people to think in those terms. And I think when they realize that it's pennies for all that they get out of it, that we don't want to necessarily say, okay, now it's going to cost two pennies or 5 pennies all the time, but to say things as simple as, between 3 and 6 p.m., the real cost of the system is more like 3 cents rather than 1 cent. We'll sell it to you for half a cent the rest of the time, particularly the middle of the night. You're just going to have to pay 3 cents if you use it during these peak hours. So maybe you might want to think about using it differently. So we've got to send some of those price signals out to people while we also do things from the policy agenda through elected representatives and the political system that show the foresight about making certain kinds of investments, certain kind of infrastructure and upgrades.
Smart grid really is, if you read the literature, really is trying to take advantage of information for consumers and utilities to optimize the balance of generation and load. And consumers represent that load, whether it's an industrial customer or a commercial customer or an irrigator, a grower, or obviously residential customers. Oftentimes we concentrate on residential customers, but it's the entire spectrum of customers. And commercial industrial are a large user. I mean, they're a huge user of electrical power in the Pacific Northwest. There are different rates of acceptance of new technology. A rural area may be just technologically, because of how the meters and the customers are dispersed, may not be as well equipped technologically as a densely populated urban area, for example. So there's going to be different rates of adoption. I've heard, and again, it depends on what is the smart grid, but smart grid adoption will, I think, occur at different rates in different areas and different utilities, and very much dependent on consumer acceptance and consumer information. I've heard as long as 30 years. I've heard as short as 5 years. And, again, it depends very much. If you go to Pullman, Washington, for example, and that's one of the test sites in our demonstration project, it can be argued that they'll be there or substantially there in about 3, 4, 5 years, because they'll have smart meters, mesh networks, demand response opportunities, really, really robust technology backbone that will allow consumers more choice, and really, and it's a great test opportunity. And you can even say, that's a really good example, but different parts of different service territories will be probably farther along based on our pilot activities.
Well, I think it can take us a lot longer than it needs to if we're afraid to think big and boldly. I think within the lifetime of kids being born today, that by the time they get out of college, we can have a fundamentally different electricity system in the country. It'll take a lot of investment. Some people say over $1 trillion, but spread out across 20 years. That's not insurmountable, particularly if it's shared by both public and private sources.
We are very sensitive to cost. We have to serve, BPA, for example, have to serve the people of the Pacific Northwest with the lowest cost, lowest rates possible. So the issues about cost, I think that they have enough checks and balances that will ensure that they are cost-effective measures. One of the main outputs of our smart grid projects, our pilots, our demonstration projects, is to really understand the costs before we make larger scale investments in certain technologies or processes or business systems.
It's going to take a commitment to not let traditional things stand in the way, to not worry as much about artificial political boundaries, even like state boundaries, and instead sit down and work together and say, we have a generation-defining task here. We are more reliant on fossil fuels that come from foreign sources than I think we've been at any time in my lifetime. We've got to not only stop that, we've got to reverse it and even expunge it from our life eventually.
One of the challenges I think that we're seeing across the board, three areas of challenges. One is it never goes quite exactly as you thought it might, because you're testing new equipment, you're testing new technologies, you're testing new communications. The second thing is these really are systems of systems. There's not just one system like an iPhone that says, okay, I pick up my iPhone. They really have to be integrated, interoperable, and sometimes that doesn't go always exactly as you thought. And the third piece is just, as we keep getting back to consumer understanding, acceptance, we like to think that we can go into these areas and create much enthusiasm because there's consumer benefit, consumer choice, and that's really what we want to have, consumer choice, while still providing a level of comfort and convenience that they're largely used to. So those are our challenges, how to optimize all of those. Consumer choice and opportunities. The technology needs to be, it's not just a standalone technology, but needs to be integrated with lots of different systems. And then there's lessons learned as we go. We're trying to incorporate those lessons in our pilots as we go. And actually, one of our goals is to share those lessons as broadly as possible across the Pacific Northwest.
I think you have to change some of the risk-reward signals in the system. You have to, utilities, for example, are key players and the people who work there. You want to reward them for things that right now they're actually punished for. If you go out and if you say, look, I could invest $1 and get my customers to buy less of what I'm selling, that's a great idea, actually, from society's standpoint, particularly if the $1 you invest doing that, avoids $5 in costs. But so many of the systems we have not only don't give you a rate of return on the $1 you invest, but say, we're actually you're going to make less money because now people aren't buying as much as you're using. So simple things like that, and it's an education process. We need to figure out a way to make people more aware of this system. And again, it operates so well, so marvelously efficiently. It's in the background, and in an ironic way, our success is part of one of the obstacles. So we don't want to make it ineffective or make it more unreliable. We certainly want to keep improving on that. But I think we do want to make people more aware that in the years ahead, spending a little bit now and having them collectively change some behavior is better for everyone.
The folks who are going to be most involved with it are obviously the consumers. Again, consumers aren't just homeowners, but they're commercial, industrial, agricultural, all the users of electricity. The second space is the distribution utility themselves. Here in the Pacific Northwest, the Puget Sound Energies, Tacoma Powers, Avista, Pacific Core, those types of utilities that are trying to use smart grid to optimize their delivery of electricity to their consumers. And then in a larger sense, the region, and BPA, who I represent, represents the larger region. How can we optimize generation and transmission in the larger Pacific Northwest? Of course, one of our big challenges is how do we best optimize and integrate the large wind resource that is coming online in the Pacific Northwest.
It's not going to be just people that know technology or people who know business. I think it's going to be people that often know a little bit about all of this that will do particularly well. There's whole new businesses to be created. I don't know what the next Amazon or Google is when it comes to the smart grid, but my hunch is that people are going to figure it out. But whether they become entrepreneurs and end up running companies or just simply want to make a good living doing something important, in that decentralization, in kind of moving to a more distributed network where a lot more moving parts exist, but because of technology they can move together in synchronicity and still work well, there's going to be a lot of job opportunities in that. In terms of anybody who's training and even retraining, this applies to folks that may be in their 40s or even 50s who are looking for a new career. I think this sector is a very exciting one. Now, it may take some time. It may actually take some work lobbying legislators and elected officials to remove some of these barriers and obstacles that exist for realizing the full potential. But I think over time it's going to be a real engine of economic growth and will make this country more secure.
People of my generation are constantly amazed at the capabilities, the intellectual firepower of people at the community college level, young people who are getting into trades or professions. So I think that we're well positioned. First of all, be aware of what's going on, be generally aware, and look for those opportunities. We don't have any jobs that are just, you're going to go to a smart grid job. Those jobs or opportunities are in utilities or in energy industries that are already there, that are going to evolve, and I think rapidly evolve. And I think the young people, with great admiration, are ready for that change and to be more adaptable to that constantly changing environment.